So the Mayans were very good at picking out a length of time that really does correspond to what's happening in the modern day, because this really is the end of an era. If you look at the 2012 time as being all of the time up to, say, 2020, and then beyond 2020 is a new age of human beings, of humankind.
Right, we're just like moving from this competitive model into a cooperative, collaborative model, and it's happening in business and in relationships.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very optimistic about the future because the positive story that I have about 2012 is that 2012 is about a net increase in the spiritual intelligence of humankind, which involves getting outside of your egocentric, ethnocentric, or human-centric perspective to be able to see larger spheres of meaning and how you connect to other people, how do you connect to your neighbors, and how do you connect to all of life.
Getting out of judgment.
Yes. Getting out of us versus
the
them.
The whole thing, yeah, the we, the me, not me, and if it's not me, then it's got to be dangerous, you know.
Well, we're actually going through a period of what I call a new ecology of collective consciousness, where other people talked about the global brain, but it's how we're interrelated to people through our information and communication technologies. So it's interesting to reflect on why change takes people to this negative scenario, this apocalyptic scenario, and why that fascinates people. And people don't notice the positive changes that are going on. Because in my book, I talk about the increase in the spiritual intelligence in humankind as a whole, and what is the evidence for that? Because if it's happening, we should be able to see positive trends. And what we see is, first of all, the end of global war between big nation states. That's not happening anymore. It is not likely to ever happen again.
Well, these little skirmishes.
Well, we have small wars.
Yeah.
But even the number of smaller wars has decreased significantly since 1990. People don't notice that. Terrorism, the acts of terrorism in the world have gone down significantly. If you look at all of the science fiction scenarios about what's going to happen, they're all pretty much post-apocalyptic, and then we have an authoritarian world, an authoritarian government, because we have scarcity.
Sells books and movies.
Scarcity of natural resources and so on, ecological impasse, and then the governments become more and more right-wing. But even in the United States, we have seen that the extreme right-wing people are kind of losing ground. In the last election, Romney versus Obama was a really good indication of that.
Right.
So I don't see going forward that we're going to have more authoritarian governments. I think we're going to have more compassionate governments where there will be more freedom and more justice in the world. We have seen that the end of during this transitional period. The end of the Cold War was about 1989. The end of apartheid in South Africa a few years later. The relative peace in Northern Ireland. So there was a lot of positive things happening in the world. But at the same time, there's a lot of uncertainty going on too. If you look at things from an ecological perspective, which we are getting closer together. The world's drawing closer together and becoming more interrelated. And then it becomes more ecologically interdependent, which means that whatever happens in one part of the world is going to ricochet throughout the whole world and affect the whole. So we're all one big spider web. Whatever someone jingles in one part is going to vibrate through the whole web. So we've got these two trends happening. We're moving towards ecological impasse, which generally is reflected in people's minds as economic problems. That's the kind of how it melts down into daily life, but it's really ecology. And on the other hand, we have the growth of spiritual intelligence. Now, is spiritual intelligence going to grow fast enough to where we can take care of these other problems and use the technologies that we're developing? Because we have all kinds of new technologies that will help our environment and so forth. Are those going to come in time? And so that's the dilemma of 2012, where we still are in the question mark of what's going to happen. And that's where it's up to each person to make a difference, because how the story is going to unfold after, say, 2020 depends on what we do now in this crucial transformational time. Because, we're not really in the new age yet. We're in the in-between time between the old and the new.
Right, we're in the doorway.
We're in the doorway.
Standing
right.
there Yeah.
So then we have a lot of the mood. I describe it as existential intensity, and what that comes down to are emotions of excitement, anticipation, the sense of it being an especially meaningful time, uncertainty, anxiety, and apprehension. So you have all those emotions coming into play at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have this existential intensity, then the question is, how will you deal with that in a positive way? And I like to look at that on the model of the personal existential crisis that people go through. And the way that works is, say you have a job, or you have a relationship, or something that's holding your life together, and it comes to an end.
Uh-huh.
And that I call the fall away. That period is the fall away, because the old meaning structures fell away. And now you're in kind of this sense of limbo.
Yeah, limbo.
Yeah. I was up there, and now I'm down here.
Right.
Now, what happens in the existential crisis is then you're really in a period of choice. You can choose to act out against other people. Sometimes people do that, or against
Whine.
yourself. You could whine, whatever. Or you could act out against others, or you could act out against yourself, and do nothing, or become an addict, or whatever, or die.
Or jump out the window
Right.
of the skyscraper.
That would be an extreme form. Or the third option is try to go back to the past. I call that the regression option. You try to go back and recreate
The good
the past,
old days, yeah.
the past before things fell away. So, for example, if you lose your job, then you try to get another job of exactly the same kind, doing exactly the same thing.
Right.
Or if your relationship crumbles, you try to meet somebody else who's as much like the other person as possible.
Right.
And we know how that works.
It doesn't work.
There's no growth there. There's no progress. There's no
No.
lessons learned.
Right.
So the fourth option is what we need to get to. The progressive option is where you embrace the new thing, the new form. And when you can embrace the new form, then meaning will flow back into your life.
Right.
And
And it's taking that leap of faith.
You've got to have a leap of
Moving.
faith that there is a positive future available if you choose for it. You have to believe in it, and you have to act consistent with that belief. And that's exactly where we are in our society, because we haven't actually gone into the full existential crisis yet of humanity, but we're right in what we call the implicit crisis, where you're at your job and you know it's going to end soon,
Yeah.
or you're in your relationship, you know it's going to end soon, but it hasn't quite happened yet.
And you're not really prepared.
You're not prepared, and that's where we are now. All these changes are going to happen. They haven't all happened yet.
Because you can't prepare for the unknown.
It's very hard to prepare for the unknown.
Yeah.
Right? So we're in that place. But when we get to the full existential crisis, where everything has to be overhauled, redone, whatever, then it's very important to be able to look past the confusion of the fall away into the recreation of new meaning, because new meaning will be created. It will assert itself if you move forward towards it. Rather than looking back to where you were, you can look forward to where you need to be.
So in other words, it's a time to start creating new meaning.
Yes, right. We have to create new meaning and new cultural forms, particularly because the transformations that are happening are all about the evolution of culture. It's our culture that's evolving and needs to evolve. And we have, culture evolves because of the choices that we make. We do this. It's not something happening to us. We're the creators of that. We're the instigators of that.
And the new meaning is not just about me, it's about us.
Yes, yes.
It's a collective
It is.
consciousness.
That's where the spiritual intelligence comes in. That you can see how your welfare is connected to the welfare of other people, and you have to work cooperatively rather than working against each other.
Exactly.
But of course, we're in the period of transition and change. So people's anxieties cannot really focus on the existential crisis of humanity. People can't wrap their minds around that very easily, so it's much easier for them to focus on a physical thing that they can imagine, a real thing, saying that's where the threat is.
Right.
Particularly if it's something remote or something possible, rather than the everyday life that we have, because we're all in the process of creating the transformation of the new age. Everything that we do every day has an impact. So we are the ones who are creating the future by what we do in every moment. So in perspective, we're going through a transformational period of about 30 years. And it's very hard to have any perspective on it when it's happening. Think about the internet, how much the internet has changed our lives.
Yes.
How long has the
Completely.
internet been here?
Not very long.
It started
In
about
the 90s.
1990.
Yeah, in the 90s, yeah.
Right. Before then, no internet.
Mm-hmm.
How long has the smartphone been around?
That's much less.
June
Mhm.
2007 was the start of the iPhone, the smartphone. So it's only been 5 years
I
that
know.
we've had
People are
smartphones.
so completely dependent
Everyone's
on it
dependent on it
already.
now.
Yeah.
Facebook didn't start to 2004. Twitter didn't start to 2006. And now all these things tremendous. Now we're going to have more and more of these things in the future.
And now people are able to speak with each other and tell the truth directly. And I see a lot about the truth being.
That's really an important point. I'm glad you brought that up because when people fantasize about the future, they think all this technology is going to mean that it's going to be easier for people to fool us and to control us. I don't see that at all.
Not at all.
It's actually much harder for the snake oil salesman to find traction now than they have. And I think this last election was a
Because
great
everybody's
example.
going to jump on them because they know this is not true, and they
Well,
do.
the ability to communicate instantly with cell phones and Twitter and so on, it's very hard to get away with tremendous falsehoods of any kind.
Mhm.
They get exposed immediately, and they circulate on blogs and social media and so forth. People thought that with the new changes in the laws that the billionaires and millionaires would control everything by pouring billions of dollars into the election, but their super PAC ads had almost no effect. In conclusion, I would say for sure, don't put off your Christmas shopping till December the 22nd. There's no reason to panic. There's no reason to go out and stock up on emergency supplies. It's always a good idea to have them anyway in your home.
Exactly. That makes
To have,
sense.
but there's no reason to hoard food or to to do any extraordinary things to prepare for December 21st. It's going to be the winter solstice, so there's a lot of energy around
It's going
that.
to be a real lot of energy.
And December is always a crazy
Big
time.
parties in Mexico
Right.
and all kinds of stuff.
There's
happening.
always a lot happening in this. December is a month of transition. It's a month of existential intensity in itself, just by itself. But there's no extra reason to be concerned about the December 21st date, other than normal things that go on in December at Christmas.
Just keep on keeping on.